The Knicks have had a pretty quiet yet eventful offseason, making a flurry of moves to maximize their strengths and add depth. But what can we actually expect from them in 2026, and are they good enough to win a championship? A year ago, the Knicks brought in Mikal Bridges and Karl-Anthony Towns, and trade packages aside, they instantly became one of the league's most high-powered offenses. Not much changed within the system. It was still a heavy dose of Jalen Brunson ball, just now in 5-out spacing. So whether it was a pick and pop with Cat or a perimeter isolation, he created advantages at will against any defense without ever turning the ball over. And in addition to his own shot making, the team was loaded with a surplus of capable off-the-catch weapons who could either knock down the three or attack closeouts. That formula took them to a top 5 offense, which was the catalyst behind their success. All it took was an average defense to get to 51 wins and the 3rd seed in the East. But that defense was ultimately at the root of their downfall. Under Tom Thibodeau, the buy-in is always going to be great, and that stood out with their strong transition defense. With Mikal or OG at the point of attack and Deuce McBride off the bench, they had options for different types of lead offensive players. With weaker links like Brunson and Cat to put in the action though, offenses didn't have much trouble creating downhill pressure. That forced them to bring aggressive help from the perimeter, which led to corner threes, so they couldn't always stop teams from creating the easiest shots on the floor. At least that was until Mitchell Robinson came back from injury. He provided a completely different presence, not just as a drop defender and rim protector, but with his ability to switch across the board. The only problem is that while Robinson was a huge defensive presence, having him on the court hurt the offense. That's because a huge part of Cat's offensive value is what he provides as a floor spacer. When he's at the 4, that spacing doesn't have nearly the same effect because now paint defenders are on Mitch, who simply isn't a threat to score in any capacity outside of lobs. And that right there was their problem against the Pacers, the inability to find a good two-way balance. Take Josh Hart for example. He's not a threat to hit the outside shot, so in the playoffs, teams put rim protectors or helpers on him, then had those guys freely roam the floor. And the Knicks either countered by putting the ball in his hands, which meant less touches for Brunson, or by using him as a screener, which meant less value for Robinson or Cat. And I do think their offense would have looked a lot better if more of those minutes were given to McBride. However, it was the defense that gave them the most problems, particularly their 2 best players. Indiana's the type of offense that's gonna find the weak link, and like I said, the Knicks had 2 of them. So the Pacers made a deliberate effort to put Brunson and Cat in every single action, then they created advantages at will to get whatever shots they wanted. It got so bad that multiple times throughout the series, the coaching staff had to choose between closing games with either Brunson or Cat instead of both, and that's where you struggle to find a balance because you need both for your offense to function at the highest level. And maybe that inability to find a consistent two-way lineup was why Thibodeau got fired immediately after they lost. What if I told you that you could have the convenience of fast food and the taste of home cooking in one fresh meal? If you're like me and don't always have time to cook for yourself, Factor meals are perfect for you. It's as simple as unboxing, heating it up, and in a matter of 2 minutes, you'll have a fully prepared meal on the table. My personal favorite is the truffle butter filet mignon with a side of potato leek mash and roasted carrots. Not just because it's delicious, but because it's high in protein and fits my goals in the gym. There's so much variety though, and you not only have the freedom to choose, you have the freedom to customize. Maybe you want a chicken breast. Maybe you're looking for a calorie smart meal. Maybe you're vegan. No matter who you are, Factor makes it so easy to eat clean, and that's why I'm excited to bring you guys a special offer. Head to factor75.com or click the link below and use code HoopVenueFB50 to get 50% off plus free breakfast for a year. You heard that right. That's code HoopVenueFB50 at factor75.com to get 50% off plus free breakfast for an entire year. Mike Brown is taking the reins in New York, and although he too got fired from the Kings, I think there are a few things he'll bring to the table. For starters, he'll undoubtedly lean into a deeper rotation. Thibs refused to go past 7, then you'd get tiny stints of the 8th or 9th guy. Brown likes to use his bench, and he likes to get creative with different types of lineups. He also likes his teams to play fast, which is a huge difference from what New York typically does. Last season, they were the 3rd slowest offense, averaging about 15.5 seconds per offensive possession, so they were almost always going up against a set defense. More pace means more easy opportunities to score, and I think it also means they'll be able to get more out of a few guys on the roster. Wings like Mikal and OG are both efficient scorers in the open floor. Cat will have more opportunities to trail the offense, where he's one of the best bigs in the league, and most importantly, it'll unleash Josh Hart a little bit more, as he's at his best with a head of steam. Even the half-court offense should move a lot faster though. Brown is a genius at creating space with positioning and player movement, which always keeps the defense on their toes. For years, the Knicks offense has been very vanilla. The ball is in Brunson's hands, then they're clearing aside to either isolate him or run pick and roll. You'd get the occasional post up or handoff, but almost all of the offense was Brunson ball, and as elite as he is at creating, there is a level of predictability. While I still expect that to be a big chunk of the offense, I think Brown's philosophy of putting the ball in the big's hands, then utilizing movement, screening, and cutting to get the defense rotating will not only make Brunson more dangerous away from the ball, it'll make McHale, OG, and Deuce more dangerous with the ball, it'll make Hart's lack of an outside shot less of a problem, and it'll get even more value out of Cat as he'll be able to utilize his floor spacing and passing skills to their fullest capabilities. What gets lost in all of this though is that for Mike Brown's entire career, he's been a defensively inclined coach. He landed on an offensive team in Sacramento, but the other side of the ball is his bread and butter. Remember those defensively slanted teams from LeBron's first stint in Cleveland? He was the head coach. Then a few years later, he was the unofficial defensive coordinator of the Warriors during their back-to-back championships. Now he's coming onto a Knicks team with really intriguing defensive pieces. Deuce and McHale bring that agility, length, and ability to dodge screens at the point of attack. OG brings the size and versatility to defend pretty much any position, while Robinson brings that schematic flexibility to the primary action through his ability to execute every coverage at a high level. I don't want to make it sound like all of New York's problems came from the coaching staff though. Not only did Thibs not use the depth, they didn't really have any, and that was a huge mission of the offseason. First, they brought in Guerschon Yabusele, and he's a really interesting piece for Mike Brown to mess with because he's one of those hybrid bigs who can play the 4 or small ball 5. He can handle the rock and pass, so you can run some stuff through him up top. He can hit the 3 consistently, so he'll space the floor or lift opposing defenders. He can operate in the screen and roll, where he's got great touch as a finisher, and he's another guy who's great in transition. So I can see Brown using him in a wide variety of different lineups, and I wouldn't be surprised if he found himself playing a key role in the playoffs. A day after signing Yabusele, they brought in Jordan Clarkson, and I expect him to play the role of a microwave off the bench. He's an extremely talented on-ball shot creator who applies constant pressure when he's on the floor, and that can do a lot for an offense in the playoffs, especially with the bench unit when Brunson goes out and they don't really have someone to create. Because Brunson plays so many minutes, they've only played about 400 without him in the playoffs over the past 3 years. But during that time, the offense has fallen off a cliff, going from what would be considered elite to pretty terrible. And numbers aside, you see it. They don't have that ball handler to force rotations, they can't get open threes, and I think Clarkson brings that to the table. Then if the game calls for a more calming presence, they also brought in Malcolm Brogdon. He's basically never healthy, a bit of a low risk, high reward shot in the dark, but when he's on the court, he's a really good pick and roll ball handler who applies downhill pressure, and he's a smart passer who basically never turns the ball over. I could see him working really well with either Cat or Robinson in the 2-man game, and he's also a big guard who can play off the ball, so you'll see him in lineups with or without Brunson. All that's to say, this New York offense has insane potential. They were already elite last year. They'll probably be faster, more versatile, they added more ball handling, more shot creation, and more passing. I think you could legitimately argue that they'll be the best offense in the NBA next season. That alone makes them dangerous in any setting, against any defense. Just look at the potential depth chart. They check literally every box you want in a great offensive team, but you'll also notice that they didn't fix their biggest issue, two-way impact players. And I think you could argue that they're going into this season with the same sort of limitation when it comes to an inability to construct elite two-way lineups. You've got lots of offense-only players, a few defense-only players, and that leaves you with 3 guys who I'm confident can positively contribute on both ends of the floor in a playoff series. So the challenge will be finding ways to fit them into the same lineup, and doing so while keeping the offensive juice of Brunson and Cat together, as that's shown to be a vulnerable 2-man pairing to attack. That's the only thing, for me, holding them back from being in that top tier of championship contenders, but they're really close. The offense is sublime, they've got interesting defensive pieces, and I wouldn't be surprised to see them win 55 games. With the current state of the Eastern Conference, I think they're a lock for the second round barring injury, and I wouldn't be surprised if, come June, they found themselves in the NBA Finals. Whether or not they can win a championship against one of those Western Conference juggernauts, only time will tell. But they've got the talent, they've got the depth, and I think we're looking at the best New York Knicks team in almost 30 years.